Alright, Petey chapter 25. After staying up late, Trevor slept in. Finally, squinting at the bright sun flooding through the window, he rolled from bed and trapezed downstairs. His parents were still not up. Calvin lay curled on the couch, still asleep, hugging his knees like a child. The black teddy bear was tucked tightly under one arm. Contentment smoothed his face. As Trevor read the comic section in the morning paper, he heard stirring and looked over to see a set of curious eyes watching him. He smiled. "Morning, Calvin." "Morning, Trevor," said Calvin eagerly. He rubbed his eyes with his fist like a baby. "Did you sleep okay?" "Yeah, but it was sure quiet." Calvin twisted his body so he could stare out the picture window. "I think I like quiet." Trevor, "Yeah, I like quiet." Remembering that Calvin prided himself on being self-sufficient, Trevor read without offering to help him get up. He stole glances above the page to see how things were going. Calvin threw back his covers and rolled onto his chubby stomach. Grunting and rocking, he slowly worked his way toward the edge of the couch with his thin arms. Each small advance was a victory of sheer determination. Finally, after some 10 minutes, he sat himself upright on the edge. As Trevor moved onto the sports section, he tried to watch the living room without being noticed. His caution proved unnecessary. Calvin lay on his stomach again, struggling back across the couch to where he had forgotten his brown jumpsuit. Another 5 minutes, and he had the jumpsuit securely clenched in his teeth, dragging it slowly back to the edge. Soon he rested again on the edge of the couch, breathing heavily, his jumpsuit in hand. Trevor stood and took some food outside to feed the cat. Calvin was so engrossed with dressing that he didn't notice Trevor return to the kitchen. He had the jumpsuit pulled over his twisted feet and bunched around his waist. Lying back on the couch, he flopped from side to side like a stranded fish, yanking at the fabric, working it up his body. With each pull, he grimaced. Trevor wanted so badly to walk down and help. A full hour had passed since Calvin had begun getting up. Another 5 minutes passed before he could coax his zipper all the way up. He sat a moment, mustering strength for the swing onto the wheelchair. Beads of sweat glistened on his forehead. He closed his eyes, tilting his head backward to face the ceiling. Then, with a mighty heave and a grunt, Calvin swung out into midair. He hung for a split second between the couch and the wheelchair. Then, with a muffled thump, he landed heavily on the leather seat. A broad grin spread across his face as he looked up and caught Trevor staring. "I do this every morning," he said. "I do it good, don't I?" Trevor couldn't believe what he had just seen. The simple act of dressing had been a monumental achievement. Trevor felt like running around the room, singing, clapping, and jumping up and down in celebration. All he could stammer was a clumsy, "You bet, yeah, you did great." Calvin grinned at Trevor. "I sure got it easier than Petey." Trevor shook his head in admiration as he went upstairs to call Owen Marsh. He needed to see if Owen minded a visit. "Hey, Owen, can Petey and I visit you this morning?" Trevor asked nervously. He spoke quietly so Calvin wouldn't hear. "Of course," Owen said cheerfully. "I'm always glad to see you two." As Trevor hung up, he wondered if surprising Calvin and Owen was the right thing to do. Trying to ignore his worries, he helped push Calvin toward the nursing home. "Hey, Trevor," Calvin chirped. "Boyd says that a jewel is just a rock that figured out how to shine." "Well, that's interesting," Trevor said, being polite. Calvin's face wrinkled in thought as he peered back at Trevor through his thick glasses. "That's what Petey and I are. Rocks." "Rocks?" Trevor asked. "Yeah, we just don't shine." Trevor stared at Calvin. What other thoughts like this were in a head that was supposed to be retarded? Calvin waited for an answer. "I think you do shine, Calvin," Trevor said. "You really think so?" Calvin's astonishment exposed the gaping hole left by his missing teeth. "Yep, I really think so." Calvin shook his head as he rolled along. "I never thought I was very special before." When they reached the nursing home, Boyd hadn't arrived yet, so Trevor left Calvin on the first floor and went upstairs to find Petey. He discovered him in the dining room where a service was being held by volunteers from a local church. Residents sat grouped around tables, most of them unaware of the program. Off-key music pounded from an old upright piano. Some residents slept, their snores mixing with the broken singing. Okay, you guys are like intruding in their space. Can you? Jackson and Reagan are trying to read. Thank you. Some stared off into space, unresponsive to the volunteers' cheerful questions. "Are you happy? Isn't this a wonderful day?" Trevor glanced around and found Petey near the window, staring serenely out at the sky. Petey was the only person in the room who seemed totally at peace with himself. "Good morning, Petey," Trevor whispered, tiptoeing up beside him. "Ow, ow," Petey grunted loudly with a smile. Several heads turned to investigate the intrusion, glaring disapproval. Quietly, Trevor rolled Petey from the room. Outside the door, Trevor said hello to Murphy, one of the residents. The old retired rancher stood inspecting the church service through a lobby window. His crippled body bore no resemblance to the young, strapping man in the old family picture on his bedstand downstairs. Murphy reminded Trevor of an old thistle bush. Now, Murphy wallowed in a well-earned cynicism. You guys are the only smart ones, he growled. What do you mean? Trevor asked. You're leaving. Murphy motioned back toward the church service. That noise makes my ears hurt. Aye, aye, Petey chimed in. Trevor wasn't about to argue with these two wise and grizzled survivors of time. He pulled Petey into the elevator and pushed the first floor button. Downstairs, they found Calvin introducing himself to everyone. Puffing his chest up with importance, Calvin announced over and over, I'm Petey's friend. Trevor smiled as he rolled Petey to his room to get ready. Just as Trevor finished, Boyd showed up, and they were off on their walk to Owen's apartment. Calvin grew more excited with each mention of the person they planned to surprise. He didn't like the suspense. Nor did Trevor anymore. At least a dozen times, Calvin pleaded, Come on, Trevor, who is it? Please tell me. Petey squealed with excitement and secrecy. When they reached Owen's apartment, everybody remained on the lawn while Trevor went inside and knocked on Owen's door. Well, how are the Cape Crusaders today? Owen asked cheerfully. His bushy hair was freshly combed, and he moved lightly on his feet. Trevor noticed the bounce in Owen's step. Was it really possible that Owen was almost 90? Only his gnarled hands truly showed his age. Where's Petey? Owen asked. He's downstairs on the lawn. We have somebody else for you to meet. Now, who would that be? Owen asked. You'll see, Trevor said, trying to keep his voice from shaking. Owen walked out the door onto the lawn, squinting toward the visitors. Calvin stared back with a puzzled stare. Then, as Owen came closer, Calvin cocked his head to one side, recognition flooding his eyes. Owen! Owen! He screamed. Is it you? Owen stopped in stunned disbelief. His voice shook. Boy, Trevor, you sure stirred the kettle this time. He walked over and kneeled in front of Calvin. He placed a hand on Calvin's shoulder. Hello, Calvin, he said. Owen, what are you doing here? Calvin asked. I live here. You sure looking good. Calvin blushed. I do? Yes, you do. Calvin's smile faded. Owen, how come you didn't keep visiting us like you said you would? Owen did not rush his answer. Sometimes when something hurts too much, you can't do it, no matter what you've promised. Did it hurt visiting us? It hurt seeing you in Warm Springs and not being able to help you. Do you remember how sad you were after my one visit? Calvin nodded his head. Why didn't you adopt us? Big tears swelled in Owen's eyes, and he bit his lip. I was 73 years old. I couldn't take care of you. I wouldn't be no trouble, Calvin insisted. I know you wouldn't. I was just too old. Petey listened intently, his eyes glassy. Trevor stood fidgeting. Owen, he said, I can't believe Warm Springs separated these two, knowing that have been friends all their lives. Owen spoke patiently. It wasn't their fault. They had to relocate several thousand patients. They returned most to their original counties. Calvin needed a group home setting. Petey needed total care. Even if they had wanted to, these two couldn't have stayed together. It was the right decision. Trevor shook his head. At least they could have sent them to the same town. Petey sat quietly, listening to every word. When the talking lapsed, Petey seized the opportunity. He flapped his arm over the side of his wheelchair and looked over at Calvin. Bunching up his cheeks, he sounded... Calvin broke into cackling laughter. Lifting his arm, he turned and pointed his index finger at Petey. Owen joined the laughter. They did that when they first met yesterday, Owen, Trevor said. What in the world are they doing? These two haven't changed one bit. Someone gave them 2 toy pistols when they were young. I guess they used to have some pretty lively shootouts on the ward. It took me about 2 years to figure out what they were up to myself. An old nurse remembered seeing them with the pistols and explained their actions to me. Owen turned. Trevor, it's good what you did today. Life has never been fair to these two, and they've never asked for anything more than what they've had. Today, I reckon you gave back to them both friendship and hope. That's a lot. After a long visit, Owen and Calvin said reluctant goodbyes, promising to visit again soon. On the way home, Trevor and Boyd started their own shooting game with Petey and Calvin. Before long, all 4 were dodging and ducking the make-believe bullets. Petey, it turned out, was invincible. He was the only one who never died. Calvin, on the other hand, went through death throes perfected during the years of battle. Before he expired, his head flopped to one side, tongue protruding. A loud, mournful wail pierced the air, ending with guttural coughs and a couple of spastic jerks. After reaching the nursing home, Calvin and Boyd said their goodbyes. Petey watched until their car disappeared, then made it clear he wanted to go inside. When Trevor rolled him into his room, Petey motioned his chin toward the closet and grunted. Is there something in your closet that you want? Trevor asked. Petey nodded and motioned toward the top shelf. Trevor dragged down a dust-covered cardboard box. Piece by piece, he pulled out old clothes, broken sunglasses, an old horse calendar, a busted transitor radio, several nearly empty bottles of shampoo, a dirty blue handbag, and 2 old hats. Then Trevor caught his breath. In the bottom of the box lay a toy pistol in a holster. Trevor picked up the pistol and rolled it over in his hands. The silver paint was chipped and worn.